minutes, less than hero time. Okay, here we go. Now, this episode is perhaps best remembered for Channel 10's very efficient usage of the quote in this episode used for promos on the channel. It's 10! Now, otherwise, this is an episode very fondly remembered by myself. I would have seen it on a DVD, that one of the season 4 rented DVDs that I may have mentioned earlier in the retrospective from the local Video Easy, which I later worked at, but that's just another story. And as a kid, I thought it was incredibly fun and entertaining. And you know what? I still overall, I do now. Like, it is sort of a silly sort of throwaway premise. You know, what if they became superheroes, or, you know, Fry and Leela gets what we would call, by our standards, you know, sort of 20th century comic book superhero powers, and Bender, you know, he's super strong and can stretch his arms anyway, so, like, he may as well join them. Like, he's a robot. A lot of robots have these sort of very useful abilities. And they form the New Justice team, this terrific little superhero trio, and it winds up being an incredibly entertaining and watchable episode of the show. As a kid, I really liked it. It was always a really fun concept when they decide to imagine the cast of some show, which is not normally like a genre show or that kind of genre show, and do a sort of superhero pastiche. It's something I quite enjoyed as a kid, you know, and this is in the 2000s, which I was going to say it's before this big superhero craze of the 2010s, but there was something of a superhero craze in the 2000s. Like, a lot of those were the biggest films.
Oh, Spider-Man, X-Men.
Yeah. Fantastic Four, Hulk, Batman and Superman, all that was still enormous. Cartoon shows, things like that.
Yeah. Plus, this one has a sort of, you know, homages or parodies of the campy Batman sort of era.
Yeah.
The cartoon, the Adam West show, I'm sure the writers probably saw on television as kids and stuff like that.
Without question, yeah. The Zookeeper's one of these sort of like flamboyant villains straight out of that program.
As well as, what was the...
Like the Simpsons, the Scoutmaster in the Radioactive Man episode.
Oh, yeah. Classic. And yeah, what's the, like the Super Friends? It's got that sort of thing as well. Even the name, like the New Justice Team, wasn't there like the New Super Friend? Like
there was a couple iterations of it, yeah.
It seems like it has a bit of like that Saturday morning cartoon superhero thing going on as well.
Yeah.
And it is a sort of funny episode, and it's probably better when you're a kid, but it does hold up to some degree.
I think it's pretty solid. Yeah.
Probably more so with this episode than even the last one I probably mentioned. Like, say if I'm watching it by myself, I prefer to watch it with people. And that's actually probably less so for Love and Rocket. And it's probably more so for this episode. Like, if I was just sitting at home watching this episode by myself as, like, a late 20-year-old, I'd just be like, what am I doing?
Oh, I'd love it.
I don't know why.
I live for this shit.
Yeah, sure. But, I mean, this episode specifically, just because I've never been the biggest, like, superhero person, I suppose.
I mean, I'm not. I'm in a weird spot with it.
Yeah. Superhero stuff's in a weird spot these days, right?
Yeah. Like, the modern iteration, like, all the comic book iteration stuff from, like, the 2000s or even the 90s onward, a lot of it's not very interesting, certainly where Marvel and DC and stuff are concerned. I'll put that to the back burner now because I don't want to distract from the episode too much. But, go on, sorry.
Oh, yeah. So, I don't know. Like, I guess by what am I doing? I mean in the sense of, like, it feels a bit like a sort of Arrested Development case. Whereas, like, you know, many Futurama episodes we've talked about are quite clearly, like, all ages. Like, you know, you could enjoy them as a 107-year-old, you know. And they're sort of... They're timeless in that sense. Whereas this one... I don't know. At my age, I'd probably rather watch it with, like, my nephew or something, you know what I mean?
I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm getting at. There's a sort of, like, exuberant innocence to it.
Yeah, that's what I like about it.
Yeah.
You know, I just
it's like going to watch Paddington Bear, you know? If I watched that by myself, I'd be like, why am I watching this in the cinemas by myself?
Well, great point.
But you go with your nephew and you're like, oh, okay, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, to be fair, watching Paddington Bear by myself is something where, especially at my age, I'd just be like, what the heck? I remember watching...
At least with this, it's a 20-minute
I remember renting the first one of those around the time it was available on the DVD because it had been, like, ridiculously acclaimed, and I was like, well, I guess I may as well have an opinion on it. And I thought it was, like, it was fine, sort of innocuous.
Sure.
I would have been, like, 18 at the time.
Yeah.
So at that time, it was just a movie, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's definitely not a movie for 18-year-olds.
Yeah, but, you know, it didn't seem like quite as, you know, now that I'm 28. Like, it's a lot different watching it now. So like, what am I doing?
Imagine if Toy Story was new and you're 18, and it gets all this praise, so you're like, I better have an opinion on it. And then you watch Toy Story.
You would have, because it was so cutting edge technologically.
No,
that's true. It was such a pre-millennium sort of,
Toy Story was a bad citation. You're right, because that
sort
was
of psychedelic.
That was
sort of Star Warsy in its own way.
It was the Snow White as well of
yes, yeah,
CG,
sure.
right?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, actually. Yeah.
So that's true. An 18-year-old probably would have, just for the visuals.
Yeah. But no, like I like this one. It's just
a good episode for sure.
I like I don't know. I do like the superhero thing to a point. Like I will say, like, when it comes to like the superhero stuff from like, oh god, especially from like the 60s through to like the 80s, and I like some of the edgy stuff in the 90s too. Like, there's a lot of really cool and like fun stuff there, and I like the ideas of it because it's so I don't know, like I like the sort of pulp and the sort of childhood sort of just like power fantasy aspect of it, but I also like how like sinister it is, and how like I think the deconstructions of it is so like, because the superhero genre is such a naked distillation of these sort of just like unromantic, blunt power fantasies, no subtlety at all, right?
Yeah.
And then when you deconstruct them, you're getting right at like a really existential core to this idea of like getting, these people who believe themselves to be these emperors and leaders and sort of protectors of other men, other humans. And that's why Watchmen was such a gnarly, brilliant text. And then why things like Zenith, tying it into like its own interpretation of the Lovecraftian mythos and like chaos magic in a psychic TV sense. Like Grant Morrison did really well then, and plus riffing off of Watchmen as it was anyway, and like what that did / was doing. And there's a lot of the Batman deconstructions and just like the way they've sort of like seen how they distill this cartoonish universe for Batman with people like the Joker and he's the sort of little Batman sidekicks and all this other sort of apparatus, and they've turned it into like this dissection of like police states, and like the Joker's pathology is like the ultimate in inhuman sort of just like Marquis de Sade just sort of psychopathy. Like, I think of Frank Miller's writing on the character, if I could line them all up in the bodies, it still wouldn't be enough. I don't count them, but you do, referring to Batman, and I love you for it. It's just like, that's chilling. Like, and that, you wouldn't have written that unless you had the basis of a weird character from the 40s to do that from. It's just like, because I love what the avenues it led to these writers to come up with. Very strange. Some of the best material ever in art are these alchemical ideas. What's so brilliant about The Shining is that it's Kubrick building on from this scaffold that Stephen King had already composed, and then Kubrick extrapolates something else from it.
Yeah.
We could say the same thing about 2001 and
for sure.
Clockwork Orange. Obviously, Barry Lyndon's
alchemy's a good metaphor for it as well, because and you brought up chaos magic before. Like, I think people who are inherently creative sort of recognize stuff like that as an implicit just fact of nature and the world and life in general, right? Just as a natural cause. And it's a shame that like we beat the magic out of children. Like, just maybe because of adult cynicism,
Probably a bit,
Adults have sort of forgotten certain sensibilities that are definitely there.
They don't want to be disappointed.
Yeah. There's some sort of like harsh reality of the world, which is a misinterpretation of chaos magic.
Yeah.
Well, things like that, because hence the word chaos, right? You don't have emotional control of magic, and I think people's ideas of magic is that it's like Cinderella going to the ball, like everything's good.
Disney, yeah.
But even in the case of Cinderella, like the fairy tale and the Disney movie, like the magic is chaotic and it doesn't last at midnight strikes, right?
Yeah.
That is the nature of creativity and magic.
Yeah.
And we I think adults sort of infantilize these ideas and then beat them out of children by doing that.
Yeah.
It's a weird sort of state.
Why'd they all go emo? We don't understand this.
Yeah, whereas an episode like this still captures that essence, and sort of feeds it into like the creativity of the kids watching it. And maybe for like adults who aren't as cynical as maybe I was at the start of this recording, they can come back around and see the sort of the components of it that are pragmatic, even to creativity. It's not emotional. It's very much a pragmatic sort of endeavor.
Yeah, I agree. It's a strong episode. I mean, granted, it's not as genius as some of the later stuff in this season, like Wire Fry, Devil's Hands, Parabox. Even an episode like Crimes of the Hot, I think, is really strong, I would say.
Yeah, this episode's almost like anti-creative in a way as well.
I see what you mean, because it's such a genre scaffold pastiche, right?
Yeah.
It's having so much fun with it that it's so pure homage. It's like when you just do a random fantasy series just for your own masturbatory sake, and you wind up just ripping off Tolkien just sort of offhandedly, blah, blah, blah. Or just like D&D tropes, if you know what I mean.
And it's consciously doing that.
Because it's fun to do that.
So it's having fun with it. Yeah,
exactly. But like, it's like, to publish it and have other people read this, they'd be like, why am I reading this? This is just everything I've read before, you know? There's no point. But yeah.
No, it is an episode that I'm quite surprised. Like, it's worth existing, but I didn't think I'd get that much out of talking about it. Yeah.
Look, I like superheroes enough in their own way that, like, I appreciate... Like, I don't like a lot of the new MCU stuff, but occasionally I think, I don't know, people can make stuff work. I'm even keen to see the new, like, Fantastic Four movie. I've always had a fondness for the Fantastic Four. I liked those, it's kind of horrifying to say, but I liked those films at the time. They don't hold up now, but the ones from the 2000s.
Fantastic Fours?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I first saw the first one, I kind of...
Like, they were fun. They were like...
But not
they
the
were
second.
like they were like Disney movies. That's why they don't hold up, because they were like the Disney kids movies at the time.
Yeah.
But that's why I liked them at the time.
Yeah.
Now things like Shrek and the Disney films, Pixar, some of the Pixar films at the time, they don't hold up that great. The Pixar ones maybe a little bit better, like Finding Nemo.
I remember watching the Rise of the Silver Surfer as like a rental and just being bored.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I liked it at the cinema, I remember.
Oh okay. Well, you saw it at the cinema. It would look a lot better at the cinema.
Plus, I was kind of transfixed by the mythology already, you know. I'd seen the first film, and I was kind of at that time getting more into the wider Marvel Comics mythos by, you know, reading about it on the internet as such, catching up on other films like the X-Men and Spider-Man films. I hadn't seen all of them.
Okay, yeah.
So it was a fun time. It was an exciting time for me, you know, just it all coinciding.
I think I saw Silver Surfer first, and then watched the first movie after that, and was like, oh, the first is way better.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
So that was probably one. What year is the Silver Surfer? 2006 or something?
7, actually.
Okay, yeah. So it was probably 2007. Because they would have played the first movie on TV.
I assume so, yeah.
They normally would do that if there was a sequel out. One of the stations would play the first movie on television.
Yeah, no, it's fun. Like, I don't like the MCU stuff, but like some of the stuff they've put out recently, like I really... Like, Deadpool and Wolverine is the most I've enjoyed one of these sort of films for quite a while.
Yeah,
in the Marvel context.
That was good.
And I really liked the Zack Snyder Justice League cut from a few years ago. I thought the Batman film was pretty solid, actually, as well.
The Deadpool, the comedy in that movie is a bit flat.
Some of it I really like, some of it maybe.
It's a bit overplayed.
I like that dog.
Yeah, the dog was alright. That was a funny sight gag, for sure. I just mean, yeah, the whole shtick is a bit... It's like 10 years old now in the Ryan Reynolds format. I thought it was a bit played out in that sense, like the comedy. And someone even pointed out the amount of, like, gay jokes there were.
There's quite a lot,
And I was like, there's a lot of, like, homoerotic jokes. Yeah. Like, Ryan Reynolds is just, like... yeah, he's got a bit of a hang-up, I think.
Yeah. But, there's also, that I quite liked about that Suicide Squad film that came out, the James Gunn directed one. That was like early Peter Jackson levels of bloody carnage.
I heard that was good. Yeah.
And like I can't get enough of the Stallone voiced King Shark. Like that's just such a genius idea.
Yeah.
Like what?
King Shark did.
That's magnificent.
That looked cool. Yeah, it was like a CGI street shark.
Just good stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, keen to see what comes of this fantastic. I wanted it to be a cool Fantastic Four picture because like. They were my avenue into finding out about other heroes and stuff, and then I got into the X-Men. And the X-Men wound up being cooler in the long run, but I always had that soft spot for the Fantastic Four, just the four of them going on their adventures in a great rogues gallery. Doctor Doom, Blaster, Namor, Annihilus, Mole Man, a bunch of other silly folks. I mean, I don't know, like... yeah, I got into the people like Superman and Batman a little bit later in my adolescence. Well, like, I remember Batman, it was because of Dark Knight in 2008 when I was 12. Like, you can't go wrong with that, you know what I mean? I remember
the Keaton one.
No, not till later actually.
Okay.
It never was exposed to me. No.
I saw that Batman movie before Batman Begins.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a DVD for Batman Begins and being like, again?
It's like a prequel. I was under the understanding it might have been a prequel when it was coming out because I was aware there had been Batman films.
Yeah.
But I had not watched them. But no, what's interesting, I thought that newer Batman film from 22 was probably more solid than Batman Begins, even because Batman Begins got its problems.
It's patchy, yeah.
I I definitely don't like it as much as Dark Knight, but I probably I have fondness for 89's like sort of production values and it's just odd cinematographic priorities.
Tonalities. Oh, 89 in Blu-ray is a good movie.
Yeah.
It was okay in VHS, but a bit more iffy.
Yeah, Returns I'm not as fun. I think Tim Burton was like too out of control. No Roger Pratt to sort of meet him halfway. Roger Pratt was the cinematographer of the film, really brilliant artist, I think. And I think that's a shame. Don't like the second one as much.
Returns is a bit boring.
It is too, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's undeniable, I think. Quite sadly. But yeah, it's this feeling on superheroes and stuff. But yeah, you can do superhero. I think the superheroes kind of need to move away now. I have my own ideas on where they may or may not want to go, but I'm not into this sort of deconstruction stuff on television, like The Boys or whatever the fuck else. I think.
Oh, that's.
I don't like the comic book The Boys, so I'm not. I have mixed feelings about Garth Ennis as a writer, so that's kind of where I'm at. From the source, I'm sort of have mixed feelings about.
Yeah, if all you're known for as a Hollywood TV or even movie type person is deconstruction satire, you're a hack.
Yeah.
That stuff is always just the most cliche on the nose stuff. And the way it gets lazy, and the way that it gets away with it is just by putting the cliches in there and being look, we're satirizing the cliches.
Yeah, exactly.
But just having them in there isn't satire.
Nah.
You got to do something with it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the difference between Some Heights High and Later Chris Lilly.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah.
I was just thinking, I only think of that because some reason.
Very Australian reference.
Thinking about the scene the other day, where finally Jonah gets expelled. And because even as a kid, I always thought it's very subtle in its drama, but also comedy. It's just because he subtly threatens her physically, which he'd never done prior, even in all his abuse or whatever. And because they have a mutual abusive thing going on.
Yeah.
And then she full blows up, even though she doesn't. She is yes, I've got him now. I can get rid of him or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's such a great satire of that dynamic between the arrogant student and teacher in a high school setting. It's very real. That literally happened to a kid I knew in year 8 and the teacher or whatever. It was exactly the same thing.
Uh-huh.
And so that's satire done correctly.
Yeah,
right?
It was almost UK Office tier in its sort of ambitions. I remember his later show. It was Angry Boys, which seemed to be a bit, I don't know, a bit too cartoonish or a bit too contrived. I don't know what to say.
I was saying, the cliches, it would just have stereotype characters and all they would do is say the cliches like their catchphrases.
Yeah, I remember he was playing a Japanese lady at one stage.
Yeah.
And and then he played a couple other characters. Some of it was really just of its time and sort of just mentioning things that were sort of topical slightly or in the last couple of years as the joke was that they were slightly out of date though. And yeah, just saying sort of aggressive, sort of bad things, inappropriate thing. Just didn't seem as sort of vital or revelatory, I remember, yeah. Yeah, that's the discussion. I got not much more to say on Less Than Hero or surrounding topics.
Nah, I can't believe that. That was a good extrapolation. Ended up with Chris Lilly.
Yeah, people outside of Australia have no idea, but that was some good stuff at one time.
Oh, I was watching a Chases War and Everything thing the other day, and it was just and coming up next is Summer Heights High, and I'm what a time 2007 was.
I'm pro 2007. We weren't affected so much by the GFC in Australia, so that was 2008, 2009 was a pretty good time for us. This is just before the end of 2009 and Facebook took over the world, and then by 2011 it was just fully embedded, and it was never the same. But I don't want to go on the spiel again.
It was a good time. If you didn't buy a house in 2006 or 7, it was a good time.
Yeah.
That
was no concept. It was an alien concept to me at my age.
Oh, of course, yeah. But anyway, yeah. Do you want to? What's the next one?
Oh, the next one is called The Taste of Freedom.
Yeah. Do you want to do that one?
I'd love to, actually.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, bye, everyone.